Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Active Uprising Online. Delighted that we can have so many people on this morning to kick off the series. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to people who have been with us throughout the journey so far in terms of number of the webinars we're hosting. I know people are coming back across the sector from furlough as well. And I'd like to thank everybody for the support they've given UK Active during this period as well, as we've gone through a very challenging period with the closure of the sector and as we move hopefully into a period of reopening. I think where we are right now in terms of reopening is hopefully in the next couple of days we'll be hearing positive communication from government in terms of a timetable for the reopening of the sector. And what's been clear in terms of the conversation we're now part of is that there is a real understanding of the key role that our sector will be playing in the combating COVID-19 going forward, not just in terms of the preventive role, but also the rehabilitation as well. So we have a key role to play as we reopen our facilities going forward to support the health of the nation. And that is going to be very important across all the communities that you guys work in. We're delighted that we've been able during the period to make sure that we can maintain Active Uprising and Summit over the next second half of this year and to move these onto digital. It's really important that we're able to continue supporting the sector in terms of its education, where we can learn from best practice across the sector, but also show where we can lobby and actually what really needs to change within Westminster to really value the role of physical activity in society. And the Active Uprising is a key element of that. You know, and what you're going to have over the next couple of months is a real focus on those key elements, looking at Sweat North, looking at the events around challenging the mindset, looking at learning development, looking at Generation Active, and also looking across digital transformation, social prescribing, workplace health. These are key areas for us going forward. And the team will be producing a really innovative, high quality program of facilities and programs for people to join in and be part of the dialogue about how we improve and professionalize our sector even further. And the Active Uprising is going to be key to that. You know, we're looking at a key theme of together we learn, together we lead, and together we grow. And I think nothing gives that greater in terms of leadership than the leadership we need to show as a sector. And we're delighted, you know, in terms of leadership, to have someone as renowned and as influential as Stoney to be kicking off the Active Uprising program. Just a bit of background on Casey. She's currently the head coach of Man United Women and guided the team to the FA Women's Championship title in its debut season 2018-2019. She's had an extraordinary career, playing over 20 years, including spells at Chelsea, Arsenal, Charlton, Lincoln, and Liverpool. And Casey's played an incredible 130 times for England over 17 years and played in 3 World Cups and also captained Great Britain in the London 2012 Games. And really importantly, in terms of leadership, in 2013, Casey became the first female member of the Professional Footballers Association management team. We're delighted to have her this morning to give her views on leadership. And these are views and influences that we can really aspire to and grow into our own leadership. So welcome, Casey. Handing over to you now. I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Hugh. Firstly, good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be virtually on this workshop this morning, to share a little bit of my experiences through sport and try to give you an idea really on how I absolutely believe sport changed my life and my outcome, and how it's influenced my life and my decisions. And how I believe that it's all about opportunity and how opportunities can really, really change your life and how you have to grab on to them with both hands. Yep. Okay, so just going to go, obviously, these are the 3 key themes that run throughout my story, throughout my journey and throughout my life. I'm very, very passionate about what I do. I love the game of football and I love sport as a vehicle. I think it's a fantastic vehicle to do good and to try and change people's outcome. I'm very determined. Once you hear my story, hopefully you'll realize that word really resonates with me throughout my different chapters in my life. And like I said, I do think life is about opportunities. And I've been really, really fortunate at times, certain times in my life, to have been given opportunities and obviously to have worked hard to take them. I'm just going to share with you a little video now that gives you an insight into my life. I love the feel of kicking a ball around. Playground, Wembley, park, it doesn't matter to me. The feelings never changed from 4 to 34. It's been everything since I can remember. I had quite a tough childhood at times. There was a lot of struggles at home. Football was the one place where I could go and I could feel free and I could forget everything else that was going on. I used to go to the local park. It was where I went where I could just escape and I could do the thing I loved. I could just forget everything. My mum found me a team to play for. I wasn't the only girl in that team. I was the only girl in the entire league. I got teased a lot. That was a man, that was a boy. Back then, you had to earn their respect. The only way I could do that was by showing them what I could do with a ball. There's been sexism my entire career. And the way you deal with it is you just focus on football. Just play. I didn't talk about stuff, and I'd boxed it all up in my head. It's been homophobic abuse. I'd had a relationship breakup, dealing with my sexuality for quite a long time. I kind of didn't want to be here anymore, and I needed help to get through that. I was away on a trip with England, and they'd just brought in a sports psychologist. I just let everything out. I owe the FA, the psychologist, England, the life that I've got now, because I don't know where I'd be without that support. I've played top international games, World Cups, European Championships. It's one of the best feelings in the world to pull on that shirt and represent your country. I'm beyond proud. I don't think proud cuts it.
Number one, I've got to get my head out. Are they ready? If I haven't got a ball, I'm always looking.
The FA have been fantastic. They're supporting me on my coaching journey so far, and I do want to give back. I want to try and help the next generation of player.
I love that. 7 turns in one go and a step over.
With the FA's support for women's football, it's in the best place it's ever been. And the girls growing up now won't have the same things to face as we did. That's all we've ever dreamed of.
Brilliant. Hopefully that gives you a small snippet into a little bit of my life, and I'm obviously going to go into greater detail now. And I really do kind of live my life by this quote that life will give us choices. You either grab on with both hands and just go for it, or you sit on the sidelines. And fortunately, I'm quite stubborn in my approach, and I'm definitely not a quitter. So sitting on the sidelines was never really an option for me. I've had some real kind of highlights in my career. That the highs are fantastic, but it's without if you don't make the right choices, these don't happen. So I've been privileged to be captain of Team GB in the 2012 Olympics, which was an incredible, probably a life-changing experience for me. I made it to be England captain. I was privileged enough to get 130 caps for my country. I won International Player of the Year twice. Played in 3 World Cup, 2 European Championships, and obviously won a World Cup bronze medal in 2015, which was a time I think was really pivotal for the women's game. But I'm just going to take you right back to the start now in terms of where it all began. Because I was just a little girl that grew up in Essex that absolutely was besotted with the game of football. My mum tells me stories of when I was 3-4 years old, playing out in the back garden with my brother, out in the street. We lived in a cul-de-sac, so it was quite safe. So it was jumpers down for goals, and you could just play all day, and it didn't cost you anything unless all you had to do was have a ball. And growing up in Essex was fantastic in terms of we could play out in the street, but also it came with limited opportunity for a little girl that loved playing football, because there was one team in the town where I lived, and that was a boys' team. My brother played in that team and his friends played in that team, but unfortunately I was never really allowed to play in it. So I used to go along with my dad on the side and watch my brother play and his friends play, and he used to just kick a ball around on the side with my dad, and I wasn't allowed to play because back then it was very much a boys' sport, a man's sport, and the coach didn't want a girl in his team. So I was very limited in terms of what I could do. Fortunately for me, at my primary school, I had a caretaker who ran the football team, and he saw me playing out at lunchtime once and said, "Can you join the team?" And
he didn't care that I was a girl. He just wanted the best players in his team, and he said that I was talented, and that was my first real experience of playing in the team, and I absolutely loved it. But something happened when I was about 6 or 7 that changed my life probably forever, in terms of the fact that my mum and dad got divorced and split up, and my mum decided that she was going to move us from Essex to South East London, where her family lived, and also where she could have more opportunities to get work, earn money, and obviously have greater opportunities in terms of jobs. So we moved, leaving our friends behind, leaving my dad behind, who lived obviously there at the time. But what it did do was open up more opportunities for us as children and for my mum in terms of work. So we moved to Morden, end of the Northern Line, and we went to school there. We stayed there. Obviously, family were around a lot more then as well. And my mum came home one day and said, I found a team for you to play for. So I'm like, okay, brilliant. If I'm honest, I think she just got sick of me breaking the pot plants in the back garden and washing all the ball marks off the windows. So I said, right, okay, when is it? Right, Wednesday. So she takes me down to we trained indoors at the secondary school down the road. So she takes me down there and I walk in, and there was one thing she forgot to tell me. It was a boys team. So I walk in, I'm the only girl in the room. I had really long hair down to my bum, and all the boys looked at me like I had 2 heads. And I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be a real challenge. And I was only 10 at the time. So we were playing, and we were probably about 45 minutes into the session. And I remember running around and I was sweating. And I remember thinking, I haven't even touched the ball yet. And there was probably about 14 boys and myself, and they wouldn't pass to me. Because I was a girl, they didn't think I was any good, so they didn't include me in anything. And I remember thinking, it's an hour and a half session. I either put up with this for the next 45 minutes, get back in my car and go home and never come back again, which, if I'm honest, there was probably part of me that wanted to do that. But then I'm far too stubborn. So rolled my sleeves up, waited till the biggest lad got the ball, and then smashed him up against the wall, nicked the ball, dribbled around a couple and put it in the back of the net. And for about 30 seconds, there was absolute silence. And I remember thinking, oh dear, I've made a mistake. And then one of them said, she's not supposed to be able to do that. She's a girl. And another lad who I'm still good friends with said, well, I think she just did. And from then on, everything changed. I became one of them, one of the boys, so to speak. They would pass to me. I had a great time. I played in the league. Not only was I the only girl in that team, I was the only girl in the entire league. So when everybody else used to turn up and get changed in the changing rooms, I would turn up in my kit ready, because there was nowhere for me to get changed. And obviously at 11 or 12, I wasn't comfortable to get changed with the boys. I would also not always be on time, because my granddad used to take me a lot, because my mum worked 3 jobs a day, 7 days a week, just to keep a roof over her head. So she wasn't around much to take me. And my granddad was notoriously late for everything. So I'd be the kid turning up just as the whistle was about to start. The good thing was that, you know, I was accepted by them. I scored a lot of goals. I used to play as a centre forward back then. And I absolutely loved playing in that team. And at the end of the season, still a highlight for me, despite what I've gone on to achieve, we had an end of season awards, and I actually won their Players Player of the Year. And that's a highlight for me, because it meant that I earned their respect. So once I picked up my award, I sat down with my manager, and I was obviously over the moon to win this award. And he said to me, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to play for us next year. And I remember thinking, he hasn't said that to anyone else. And actually what I hadn't realised was, unfortunately, due to mixed sport rules back then, the minute you reached 12 years old, you were no longer allowed to play mixed sport. So my football team, I had to quit. My school team, I couldn't play anymore. And any form of football that I actually loved doing was pretty much taken away overnight, because I couldn't play with the boys. There was very little girls' teams around, if any. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. Fortunately for me, throughout the summer of that year, a girls' little league had popped up around the corner from my house at the park, which meant it was going to have 8 teams in it. All the local girls were going to go and play, and it was an opportunity for me to go and play. And it also meant I could be on time, because I only had to walk there. So we trained once a week and we played on the weekends. Was it as challenging as I needed it to be? Probably not. But again, I talk about opportunity. This is where probably the biggest moment happened in my career. Was there was a man who was Chelsea ladies manager at the time, and Chelsea only had a senior team, and he'd come over to watch the young girls train to see if there was any talent. and he'd obviously been watching and spotted that I had a bit of talent. And I could see he was talking to my mum. I didn't know who he was at the time. I just saw this strange man talking to my mum and very protective over my family. So at half time, instead of going to the manager, I go to my mum. I'm like, who's he? And he put his hand out. He said, Chelsea Ladies manager, I've been watching you play. I'd really like you to come and train with us. So, well, I nearly ripped his arm off. So I was like, where, when? And he said, don't worry, you go and play the second half. I'll sort the details out with your mum. So I'm walking home with my mum that day after the game. We've won. I've scored a couple of goals. So it's a really good day in my life. We get home and we're having a chat. And Mum said, just sit down for a second. I need to talk this through with you. I was like, right, okay. And then what we realised very quickly was you had to pay to play. Even for Chelsea Football Club, the manager was a volunteer. And we had to pay kit subscriptions. We had to pay for training. We had to pay for games. We didn't have a lot of money back then. Like I said, my mum worked a lot just to keep a roof over our head. We didn't have new boots and new kit like that. It was very much what we could get our hands on. So for £8 a week, it was a bit of a struggle. The good thing is my mum had a conversation with the manager, and the manager, who I'm still in contact with now, let us pay less. You know, we paid less subs, we paid less for the kit. And he also arranged lifts for me as well. He would actually pick me up and take me because, like I said, my mum was working. She worked cleaning other people's houses in the morning. She worked in a betting shop in the day, and she worked at pubs at night. So we used to train on a Wednesday and Friday night, and he would take me. And if he didn't take me, one of the other players would, because at 12 years old, there was only two teams at Chelsea, and that was the senior team and the reserve team. So I had to play senior football from the age of 12. Legally, you're not supposed to till you're 14. So we used to fake my registration, date of birth on my registration so that I could play. And luckily I was quite tall, so I could get away with it. I broke into the first team within a kind of 6 weeks of being there, which was fantastic. And it also meant that, if I'm honest, I always saw the opportunity that I always had a lift. So, you know, the players and the girls were fantastic. Used to pick me up, drop me off, and he would pick me up and drop me off. And it was that same manager when I was 14 said, you know, I think you've got potential to play for England. And I remember at the time, I think we were on the way to training, and I laughed. And I hadn't a clue how good England were, because they weren't on the TV. You couldn't see them anywhere. There was no visibility. But I just knew if it was an international team that I probably wouldn't be good enough. And he said to me, actually, you haven't got a choice. I've registered you for trials and I'm taking you, and the next weekend. So I'll be picking you up at 9 o'clock and we're going. And I remember thinking, I've got no choice now. So we turned up to Bisham Abbey, the National Sports Centre, and there was probably about 70 or 80 girls, all 14, 15, all trialling for England. And you did different things throughout the day, different tasks. And I remember probably the whole day thinking that I'm not good enough to be here. Everybody else is better than me. Everyone's got nice boots on. Everyone's a better player than me. And I shouldn't really be here. So I probably trained like that. So when they sat us all down at the end and they said, right, we're going to write to you in a couple of weeks' time and we'll let you know if you've been successful. Maybe I didn't have a lot of hope. So I waited for the 2 weeks, which I'm honest, at 14 felt like about a year. Every day on the way to school, I checked the doormat, is the letter there? Finally, the letter comes and I pick it up, and I think stupidly I've got to be excited. So I rip the letter open and I'm running to my mum, and I'll never forget the first word it said on the letter, because the first word said sorry. And I remember thinking sorry, and it just said, we're really sorry. We don't feel like you're good enough at the moment. You probably need to come back for another trial in a year's time. And I remember at 14 that being an absolute bombshell for me, because I wasn't particularly academic. I did okay in school. My home life wasn't great. My mum had a boyfriend, and he had a bit of an issue with alcohol and wasn't a very nice man with it. So for me, football was my escape. It was my sanctuary. It was where I felt safe. And it was where I felt like I was actually okay at something. And to be told I'm not good at that at 14 was obviously real rejection at that age. And I remember kind of going away and thinking, right, I'll just carry on playing for Chelsea. You know, I'll keep enjoying my football and see what happens. And about 4 weeks later, I got another letter through the post from the FA. They were having a second lot of trials to have a look at the players that were maybe close last time, but not close enough. And I was invited back. And I remember kind of sitting on the sofa at the time thinking to myself, right, I can go back and I can fail again, and I can feel like I do now, which is rubbish, because nobody likes rejection. No one likes being told they're not good enough. No one wants to fail. Or I don't go back, because if I don't go back, I can protect myself. I don't get rejected again. I don't have to feel like this. And I sat there with that for a long time, kind of a couple of days, just debating whether to go or not. And it was a real light bulb moment for me, because I was like, you know what, there is actually another option. It's not a matter of just going or not going. It's about going back and actually believing in myself, because unless I believe in myself, no one else is going to. And it doesn't matter what boots I've got on my feet. It doesn't matter what kit I'm wearing. It's about what I do when I'm out on that pitch. And that's my pitch. That's where I go, where I can express myself, where I can be me, and I can feel really good. So I went back that day to that trial, and I said, no matter what, I'm just going to give it absolutely everything. I'm going to run more than everyone else. I'm going to be brave when I get the ball. I'm going to take people on, and I'm going to show those people with their clipboards and their pens that I am good enough, because I don't want to walk off this pitch and look back in 10 years' time and think, if only I would have believed in myself, if only I would have given myself the best chance, if only I would have really, really, really put everything into it, irrelevant of what anyone else thinks. So I went back and I had a really good trial. I trained really well. And again, they said they'd write to us in 2 weeks' time. So this time when the letter landed on the doormat, I took it to my bathroom, because that's the only place we've got with a lock on. And I didn't want mum to see me upset. I didn't want to be upset in front of anyone, to be honest. And it took me about 10 minutes to open the letter. And I opened it, and fortunately for me, the first word this time was congratulations. And I'd got into the England under 16s. We started going to Loughborough and Lilleshall and different places and doing camps. And then Arsenal phoned and said they wanted me to join them. They were the best team in the country then, dominated women's football for years. And I remember going to Highbury at the time and being shown around, and I just couldn't believe what was happening. So obviously I signed for Arsenal, which meant at 16 I had to get on the tube Tuesday and Thursday night to get to training whilst being at college, and obviously playing at weekends. I was doing my A-levels at the time whilst I was playing for England and playing for Arsenal. And a few things happened in my life where, if I'm honest, education didn't become a priority for me. And I actually quit my A-levels halfway through, which probably is still a regret for me in terms of having the options to have different careers. But it was the right choice for me at the time. So I then started working for Arsenal, and I was actually working in laundry at the training ground, washing the men's kit, so I could earn some money to play for Arsenal. And obviously, I wanted to try and buy a car so that I could have that independence and be able to travel to and from training, which I managed to do. I think I bought my first car for about £600, which meant I had independence and I could do what I wanted. I also moved out of my house and moved into the flat at Arsenal as well, so that I had a different environment around me. And I played for Arsenal for quite a few years. At 18, I made my senior international debut for England. And I went on to be capped quite a few times for England during that period. And then in 2005, we had the European Championships in this country, which was going to be one of the biggest things women's football had ever seen. We had obviously the most amount of fans come in, and I'd played every single game leading up to this tournament because we didn't have to qualify. We were just playing friendlies. And then we had the first opening game, and we were playing at the Etihad, and we were playing Finland. And I remember that Hope Powell was the manager at the time, and she named the team the night before, and I wasn't in it. I was on the subs bench. And I remember thinking to myself, what have I done wrong? But Faye White, who was the captain, who'd been injured, who when I was playing had come back. She made a few changes in the game, and I didn't get on. We won the game 3-2. Second game came. My family were all coming up to watch. She named the team. I wasn't in it again. I was on the bench. Didn't get on the pitch again. And we were playing our third game in the group. If we lost the game, we were bottom of the group, and we were actually going home and out of the tournament in our home tournament, which you know wouldn't have been a great result for us. And we went 1-0 down. 70 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes. The only time I stepped a foot on the pitch was to put my arm around my teammates to commiserate them because we'd been knocked out and we were going home. I was one of only 2 players in that tournament not to step a foot on the pitch, and obviously to not play. And I remember sitting down after that tournament being really, really angry at my coach, angry at my assistant coach, angry at everybody really, because at that time I had a full-time job. I was working in a gym, and I was working 6 days a week to try and accrue enough time to take off to go away with England because we didn't get paid, and obviously I couldn't just go and take 4 weeks off of work, so I had to accrue enough time off, and I felt like I was kind of making all these sacrifices, I called it back then, for nothing. And I remember that being another real kind of light bulb moment. And actually, instead of blaming everybody else and being angry with everybody else, I just needed to look in the mirror and say, was I doing enough? Was I doing enough to get myself in the team? Was I doing enough to make sure that the manager noticed me? Was I working hard enough? Was I, learning the game enough? Did I know my position? Did I educate myself in terms of what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were? And from that day onwards, I've really kind of lived with the work ethic that I'm always looking over my shoulder, and if I want that shirt, I've got to go and get it. And then when I get it, I've got to keep it because someone else is going to want it. So I started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and training, because I worked at the Beckham Academy. Then I had access to 2 full-size pitches. I was training kind of 2 hours, and then I'd do a full day, 8 till 4 or 9 till 5. Then I'd get in the car, drive around the motorway, and then I'd go and train as well because I was at Chelsea at the time. So I was getting up early, training late, and doing that religiously every day because I thought to myself, if I make myself the fittest player in that team and I work harder than everyone else, again, I can't have any regrets. It can't be on me. If they don't pick me, then it's because I'm not good enough. It's not because I haven't done the work. And it paid off for me because 2 years after 2005, when I hadn't played a minute, we went to a World Cup in China, and I was one of 4 players to play every single minute. Off the back of that World Cup, I won International Player of the Year, and then went on to win a silver at European Championships in 2009. In 2011, another World Cup quarterfinals, which we unfortunately got knocked out on penalties, but I did take one and fortunately scored. And then 2012. And I remember 2012 being a real special year for me because, like I said, 7 years previous, the manager said I wasn't good enough to play and didn't play me. And in the March of 2012, I got a phone call from the manager to say that she wanted to make me the captain of England. And I remember that kind of being one of the proudest moments of my career because it meant I'd earned her respect, and that wasn't an easy thing to do. I then went on to obviously captain Team GB. And I remember standing in the tunnel at Wembley when we were about to walk out and play Brazil. And I'd had a whisper, we'd heard there'd be kind of 40,000 people in the ground, which in women's football is incredible. And as we stand in the tunnel and I'm about to lead the team out, we walked out, and actually there was 72,000 people in there. And the stadium was absolutely electric. And as I walked out, I just remember every single hair on my body standing up as the entire stadium started chanting Team GB. And I remember thinking to myself, everything I've ever done, that 11-year-old that, wanted to walk out the sports hall with the boys team, that 15-year-old that went back for that second trial that didn't want to, that 23, 24-year-old that didn't quit in 2005 when, if I'm honest, there was a temptation to, that actually worked harder. All of those moments got me to walk that team out in front of 72,000 people and play at Wembley. And as a little girl, I could never have dreamed of that moment. And we beat Brazil 1-0. And unfortunately, we obviously went to the quarterfinals. We had a habit of going out of quarterfinals, unfortunately, and we lost to Canada. And as a captain of that team, I was absolutely devastated. So we didn't medal. I think that was the big opportunity missed there. Fast forward a year, we go to the Euros in 2013. We had big expectations going into that tournament. We were expected to do well, and we came bottom of the group. Off the back of that, the manager got sacked and a new manager came in. I had a conversation with that new manager very early, and he said that he was going to obviously review the captaincy, but that I'd done a great job and I would be in the frame. Fast forward 2 months, I was sat at home watching the women's football show, and the manager was on the show and announced that he would be changing the captaincy and naming it this week. Unfortunately, he'd forgot to tell me that. So that was how I found out that I was going to lose the captaincy while sat at home. And I remember that being another moment where I thought to myself, I'm not doing this anymore. I'd pretty much worked my entire life whilst playing. I'd made a lot of choices. I call them choices because it's my choice to play football. It's my choice to miss weddings. It's my choice to miss christenings. It's my choice to miss the time out with my friends because football was something I wanted to be the best at that I could be. And I remember then being dropped from the squad, not being picked without a lot of reason. And I felt like it was probably because I was the previous manager's captain, and therefore he wanted to change a lot of things. And I remember again thinking, right, it's time to roll my sleeves up now. You're not going to end my career. I've worked too hard for too long to let somebody else dictate when I finish. So what I decided to do was make myself so valuable that even if I didn't play, you would still pick me. So I worked really hard off the pitch in terms of contributing to the team, making sure I was a good person, making sure that I was a support network for the players, making sure that I was a support network for the manager, which, if I'm honest, took a long time for me to grow that respect back with him and build that relationship. But I wanted to do that. And also, I wanted to learn, because I'd been coaching since I was 17. At all the clubs that I played at, I coached through the regional talent centres. I was head coach of Chelsea Academy. When I actually played for Chelsea, I was player manager for a year, which was an incredibly testing time for me to play, captain and manage. But I decided that it'd be a learning experience for me. So, I built a relationship with the manager. I became the go-between with the players. I was in the leadership group. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to, if I wasn't playing on the pitch, how could I add so much value to that team that I felt that if they picked a medal up and I hadn't played, I'd still played my part and I'd still contributed. And I just wanted to learn as much as I could during that time. And I'm really glad I made that decision, because in 2015, we went to Canada and we had an incredible experience, and we picked up a bronze medal, which I think changed the face of women's football and the way it was perceived. And obviously, fast forward to 2 years, we go to the Euros. And that was my last tournament, and I didn't kick a ball in that tournament because, unfortunately, I pulled my hamstring 2 weeks before. And then when I was rehabbing my hamstring, I pulled my calf. So I think my body was telling me very much that it was nearly time to call a day on my career. But as a female in the game, obviously, I didn't turn professional until I was 30. I didn't earn a lot of money, and retirement was absolutely petrifying. I was going to lose my identity. I was going to lose all of my income overnight. I had a family. I had 3 children who relied solely on my income, and that was all going to go overnight. So the thought of retirement coming towards me was really frightening. But what I had tried to do is prepare myself. So whilst I was playing and also coaching, I was going through my coaching buddies. I'd done my level 2, my level 3, and my A license, so that when I was ready, hopefully there would be an opportunity for me to go back into the game, because I couldn't imagine my life without football, and it's pretty much all I'm good at, if I'm honest. So when Phil Neville got the job as the England coach, I went and met Phil, and we had a conversation, and he wanted to bring me on the staff. It made sense. I'd been in the international setup for 18 years. I knew it probably as better than anybody, and I could support him in those initial phases in terms of his transition into the women's game. So I made the immediate decision to retire, and I knew it was right because I didn't regret it, and I didn't have second thoughts about it. My body kept breaking down. I felt like I had to really raise myself for games, which I'd never had to do before, and it was the right time and the right opportunity. So I took the job with Phil, and I loved I was only there for a few months, but I absolutely loved it. And then obviously I got wind that Manchester United was starting a women's team. So I thought, why not? I'll put my name in the hat. I wanted to be on the grass more. Obviously, at internationals, you only coach kind of 5 days every month. For me, as a person who'd come out of retirement into coaching, I wanted to be full-time. I wanted to be on the grass with the players all the time. I wanted that contact time. I wanted to learn. And I think you learn by being in it day to day. So I went through the interview process, and if I'm honest, probably never ever dreaming that I'd get the job, because I knew the type of caliber of candidates that were going for it. And then I got a call to say I got the job, which was daunting, scary, but absolutely brilliant, because I got the job on June the 8th, and on July the 8th we were back in for pre-season, and at June the 8th I had no players and no staff. So I had 4 weeks to recruit 21 full-time players and 6 full-time staff and try and pull the whole program together, which was fantastic learning experience for me. And I'm just going to show you a little bit about the memories that I've had along the way. I've been very fortunate to meet some fantastic people, have some incredible experiences, winning FA Cups, playing in Olympics, winning bronze medals, getting an MBE was a very proud moment. But like I said, this is the way I coach now, and this is the way I manage, because I'm still that little girl that just loved playing football. And when I coach and when I work with my players, I try to never, ever forget why they started playing the game. It's because they loved it. Moving on to Manchester United. It's a new chapter for me and a massive new opportunity, not just for myself, but for everybody involved in this project and this journey.
This is United, forged of the fire and steel of Manchester. Make way for new Red Devils to adorn our walls.
Can't hide away from the fact Manchester United is the biggest club in the world. They're going to have a women's team, and I'm going to be able to build a team, build a philosophy with the biggest club in the world. For me, there's no more exciting opportunity than this.
Promotion is our aim. We want to get up as quickly as possible. We want to be in the Super League as quickly as possible and start competing with the top teams.
We're creating history as we speak, and to be a part of that is exciting, and the future is just so bright for me and the team.
So we want to kind of build a legacy and build a history for the women's team, and to kind of inspire young girls to grow up dreaming and playing for Manchester United.
Another big day for Manchester United women. The fixtures for their inaugural season have been released, and it all kicks off on August the 19th with a League Cup tie against Liverpool.
It's the first goal ever scored by United's professional women's team, and it could be the winner.
This is my team. These are my heroes. This is my Manchester United.
So obviously it was a whirlwind of a time in terms of taking this job on, but I felt like I was really privileged because I had 30 people and 30 journeys to inspire and influence and give them 30 opportunities to change their lives. And the biggest challenge for me around transitioning from playing to being a head coach was taking on so many different responsibilities in terms of leadership. What you don't realize, obviously, when you're playing, you just turn up, you train, you go home. And what management incorporates in terms of managing up, managing down. I'd been a captain of all of the teams that I'd played for. So there's obviously kind of a natural leadership quality in me, but very different as a head coach in terms of getting to know. The biggest thing was getting to know all these 30 different people, their backgrounds, their journeys, where they've been from, what shaped them, what their experiences are. How do I coach them? How do they learn? What are their needs? And that was going to take time. But we do things a little bit differently here in terms of we do ask everybody to share their journey so that we can understand them as people first. Because if you understand them as people, you know what motivates them, you know what drives them, you know how to manage them better. And also knowing that I'm going to get things wrong, and I'm really open and honest about that with my players and my staff. And that's how we work together to get things right. And not having an ego. I don't believe in egos. I say all that to my players and my staff. If you've got an ego, leave it at the door before you come in, because we work together. We're a team. But knowing within that team, we've got lots of different individuals who bring different strengths. And also knowing their strengths is really important, and bringing their strengths out is part of my job. And obviously the biggest thing was setting those boundaries, because I was a teammate to some of these players, and all of a sudden I'm the boss. So setting the boundaries and setting my expectations and my standards from the start was really, really important to me. You know, my players and staff will tell you that I drive them mad about standards, because, you know, I think it's winning every day that counts. And when I talk about winning every day, it's about doing the right things when nobody's watching. So for me, when I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and training, no one was watching me. No one knew if my alarm went off and I turned it off, and I didn't bother going out in the rain. It was, I knew, you know, I knew what I was doing. I was preparing, and I say that to my players all the time. It's so important that when no one's watching, you're doing the right things, and that's about integrity. So, you know, I had to lay those boundaries. I had to make sure that everything we did was with integrity and standards, and also role clarity and expectations for my staff, so they know exactly what I expected of them, what they were there to deliver, and the same with my players. And I do believe if you have a passion for something, this hasn't happened overnight. I've loved football since I can remember, 2-3 years old. And I've invested in it throughout my entire life. Yes. Has it always been rewarding? No, there's been ups, there's been downs. But I massively am an advocate that it's your setbacks that make you. It's the times when you feel that you're at your lowest, or you feel like you've had that setback in terms of, you know, I go back to the sports hall, the trial, not playing in the Euros. They were the springboard for me. They were the catalyst for me to roll my sleeves up and say, I'm going to change this. I'm making a choice now to make sure that I achieve. I'm making a choice to make my life change. Sport has changed my life. Football's changed my life. But I firmly believe it's because of the choices that I've made during those times with the opportunities that I've had. If you wake up every morning and you are lucky to do what you love for a living, it's a privilege. You know, my job never really feels like work. Yes, there's pressure. Yes, there's expectation. Yes, there's stress. But I get to do what I love for a living. And I'm really, really privileged that I work with players to do that. I'm huge on my players with role modeling as well, and there's a responsibility within that, because I grew up as a little girl with no visibility of what I wanted to be. If I wanted to be an England player, I had no idea what it looked like. I had no idea what I had to do to achieve it. If I wanted to be a head coach when I was younger as a female, I wouldn't have seen it. And I massively believe you have to see it to believe in it, to then put the work in to achieve it. And obviously really, really privileged that this brought me onto my book, because I think no matter what you want to do in life, who you are in life, you should always be able to see yourself in a book. I've got 2 little girls and a little boy, and I'm really, really keen that no matter the wages, if my little girl and little boy wanted to play football, that they might not ever earn the same money, but they should always be able to have the same opportunities, and no one should ever tell them they can't. So I obviously did the book, and it was a labor of love for me, because it meant that I got to talk about so many pioneers in the game that enabled me to get to where I got to, and also to celebrate the game where it is now, but to make those players visible. So if my little girls pick up that book, they can see that they can play. They don't have to pick up a match of the day book and see boys. They can see themselves in it, and they can actually dream that they can be something within the game. And there's so many more opportunities now, whether it be playing, managing, broadcast, but there's still so far to go. But you know, I get up every morning, my alarm goes off, I'm driven, I'm motivated, because I want to change the path for my little girls so they have the same opportunities as my little boy. And I think football and sport has the opportunity to do that. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you so much, Casey. It was an absolute pleasure to hear your story, and there's a huge amount of insight there around resilience and leadership, which is incredibly important at this time, and particularly as we adjust to a new normal. I know we've mentioned that before, so thank you again. Right, we've got a couple of questions here, so let's see if we can whiz through the ones that we've got. So this is from Anonymous. I hope you're still on the line and listening to this. So we hear heartbreaking stories every day of how young girls who don't feel comfortable being active or playing sport. Sport England recently showed that perhaps girls are more confident getting active with their mums. What do you think is key to engaging girls early, and what role should mums, dads and teachers play within this?
Listen, it is a challenge, and I think it's a self-awareness thing. It's a physical literacy in terms of confidence thing. Obviously it's easy for me because I'm an active mum, so I go out in the garden and I encourage my kids to play, but we do loads of activities. Like, obviously we've had to homeschool over the last 3 months, which has been a different challenge, but we've done maths through, running around with water guns, spraying sums off the wall. We've done, when I used to coach, we used to do doubles clubs. So we'd do a bit of maths in the classroom around football if they had an interest in it, percentages around passing stats, and then we'd go out and coach them outside. I think it's potentially parents putting themselves on different coaching courses, like multi-sport courses, so you're not specializing in one thing. It's mums showing them they're doing it too, because your parents are your biggest role models in your life, irrelevant of sports stars. It's your parents. So if your mum's active, you see that you're going to be more confident to be active, and if you can do it together, you have that bonding experience as well. And I could speak for hours on PE in schools, because I think it's primary school sport that is where we really struggle to keep girls when they get to secondary school, because primary school teachers don't have enough training to deliver PE. If they had more training, you had specialist PE teachers in primary schools, young girls would have a better experience of PE. Therefore, their physical literacy would be better, so that when they get to 12, 13, 14, and they're more self-aware, they don't just quit because they think, I can't do this, because they've got more confidence in the first place because they're able. So there's a big piece, I think, from the government, if I'm honest, in terms of improving that from primary school upwards.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now over to a question from Owen. How can we keep female sport high in the nation's consciousness? Has the lockdown affected this?
Yeah, of course it has. Women's sports disappeared, hasn't it? Completely disappeared. It comes with its challenges because of finances and resources, and that's why the Premier League can continue and other leagues can't, because it's a financial thing. I think its visibility is very important. I think that starts at the very top in terms of who's on the boards, who's making decisions, because if you don't have women on boards, you're not going to have decisions about women's sport. So it's really important that we have parity on the boards before, and that will filter down. You look at the amount of, I think it was stat I read last year, 2% of any media coverage, 2% is towards women's sport, and that's all sports. That's, until we change that stat, the visibility is not going to be there. So there's a lot of work to do around that.
And that comes back around to what you were saying around representation and role models and all that kind of thing, so people can visualize themselves in that space. Absolutely. Another anonymous one here. How do you think gyms and leisure companies can help encourage more women to consider working their way up into leadership positions within these businesses in particular?
Again, it starts with the top. You've got to have females in those positions so that the visibility is there. The pathway has to be there. You have to put on the right courses, and obviously women have more challenges as well if they're mums. There's a certain expectation in terms of our roles within society, which isn't always what should be. I think the FA have done fantastic work. They have female only coaching courses, because I know when I've been on coaching, I'm the only woman in the room, and if you're not a certain type of person, that can be really daunting and intimidating. So trying to make it accessible, to try and find out what the barriers are, remove them, and then encourage women to take up positions. And also it's about making sure that they can go for promotion, and it is just because they might have children at home, you don't hold that against them, and there's a clear pathway for them.
Absolutely. Lovely, thank you for that. So another one here from Will. How did you find adapting to leadership on the field to leadership off the field? Obviously, I know you briefly mentioned that earlier, but a little more detail. And who were your role models, and whose leadership styles did you learn from?
The adapting was massive, because being a captain of your teams is very different to being the manager of an entire program, and realizing that actually you have to manage so much more off the grass. The football bit's the easy bit. It's dealing with so many personalities from different backgrounds, different issues. Every day there's something that you're firefighting or dealing with. Knowing that you have the people in your team, no matter whether your staff, they need to know you care. Ultimately, they need to know you care about them as people, their careers, where they're going. because then you have the ability to have, if you build that relationship with them, then you can have difficult conversations. And I think too many people avoid difficult conversations because they're difficult. Well, actually, I've always respected those conversations because I know exactly where I stand. I know exactly what I've got to work on. I know what your thoughts are if you're the one having it with me. So I think it was hard to adapt, but I think because I've always been really honest and believed in integrity and always had the right agenda, I think I adapted a lot quicker than I would have thought. And I'm very clear. I think communication is very important in a leadership role. People need to know their roles. They need to know your expectations. You need to be clear and concise. But also you need to put your hands up when you get it wrong, because then it encourages your staff and your players to do it too. And you can have clear lines in terms of communication, because it's two-way. I always say to my players and my staff, I don't know what I don't know. So unless you tell me, we can't work together to fix it. So, feedback's important, reflection is important, and humility is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the role model one, though. I'll be honest, there are role models, but I try not to be anybody else, because I want to be authentic. So if I tried to be anyone else, I wouldn't be myself. And I think in leadership, you have to be authentic. You have to be you, and it has to be your way of doing things.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. And I suppose you can probably pull on different role models in terms of elements that you like, isn't it?
I look at my mum and go, right, there's the work ethic. That's where I get that from. I look at my manager in Hope Powell, and she was quite a disciplinarian. So in terms of standards, maybe I pulled that from her. One of my managers, Keith Bonus, was really caring. So I take that element from him. And you can take elements from everybody, but ultimately you have to be you.
Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity. Got a question here from Minesh. With so many highlights and lowlights to get you where you are today, what mentally has been the most rewarding and challenging moment? Don't know whether that's one or two there, but
yeah. Wow. There's been so many. I think in terms of rewarding, walking out of Wembley at the Olympics it just made everything worthwhile. And also, I've always then gone, no one's taking my shirt. It was the fear of losing my shirt, because I knew what the shirt represented to me in terms of changing my life. So I've always had that work ethic and drive to be better. And I think my background has made me want to drive and be better for everything. And obviously when my children were born, it changed my perspective on life, because it didn't become about me then. Now everything is about providing for them and giving them a greater future and an opportunity. So I think the Olympics and not playing in 2005. Not playing in 2005 absolutely killed me as a player, but made me as a player at the same time.
Incredible thing to think about there in terms of how that setback, and then it's pushed you on to do so much more since then. A question from Andrew here. Do you think when the current England women's coach leaves the role, that the England women's team needs a female coach moving forward?
I think if we're talking about visible role models, then I think eventually, yes, I think that should be a female, because I think, there are limited jobs for females in the game, and that should be that's the pinnacle. So it should be a woman, but it has to be the right woman with the right experience that's going to go and be successful as well. So I'm very much about the right person for the job, in terms of being the right candidate. But ideally that right candidate is female.
Absolutely. And then it kind of goes back to what you were saying about your children as well, where they should both have equal opportunities. It's about the opportunity, isn't it? And then obviously the right person for that role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question. Oh no, that's from Laura here. An inspirational story, great role model. Thank you for all you've done to the women's game over the years. So that's a thank you from Laura there. A question, another one for anonymous, unfortunately. But what can the men's game learn from the women's football about welcoming and celebrating LGBT players?
A lot. The fact that there isn't a single male out gay player in 92 league clubs says a lot. But we live in a different world in women's football. We have less fans in the ground. It's very much a family atmosphere. It is welcoming. The dressing room is, people don't care about your sexuality. They care about how you're going to deliver your job and are you a good person. There's a lot that football can learn. And I think men's football has the power to really influence society as well. So I think it could learn a lot. there needs a lot of change to happen first.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's an interesting, well, a lot more to do, as you say, within that. Another anonymous one here. How has sports psychology had an impact on your career? Massive.
Because in 2005, when I talk about in the video, it was actually a sports psychologist that I almost broke down to and helped me kind of find my way back up again. And she helped me in terms of why I had so much negative self-talk, and I just thought it was around performance at the time. I hadn't made the connection to stuff that I wasn't dealing with, and also helped me with visualization techniques that I used throughout the years, relaxation techniques that I used throughout the years, goal setting techniques, because when you're a player, you're just taught to go out there and perform. Sometimes you don't know the how and how to fix things. So yeah, it's been crucial throughout my career, and we try to utilize that here as well in terms of making sure the players have got that support.
Great. And final question here, another one from Minesh. Do you think that there will be more female role models in the men's game? Only one female official so far, and what is being done to push this agenda further?
I couldn't tell you what's being done to push the agenda in terms of officials. I know that I watched the game last night and there was loads of positives about Shah Massey running the line, and I think she's one of the best. But that has to happen more. So you see her do it, and she's really good at it. And actually, I see that as a female, and I go, if I'm interested in that line, okay, there is opportunities. I can do it, and it's about creating opportunities. It's about us as females being good enough to do it and do it very well. Because I've always said, and it's wrong, but if I walk in a coaching course and we walk in the same door, me and a man, the man's automatically got respect of the room because he's a man. They think he automatically knows what he's talking about. I have to spend the next 5 days earning it. So we have to be good at what we do, which is important, but it's about opportunities, visibility, and that's to do with governing bodies. That's to do with boards, that's to do with leadership higher up, because until you get more women in decision-making positions, we can't influence lower down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and we've got one more question, so hopefully we'll keep it a quick one. It's a long question from Jack. We've seen children's activity levels drop during lockdown, but interesting, girls' activity level is higher than boys during this time. What do you think this says about how the normal system is set up?
It probably tells you it's not catering for girls, if that's the case, because you have to think about what girls like to do things socially, and it might be little things that you have to remove. Like even my players now, if we go into a change room, there's not a mirror, it's an issue. If there's not a plug socket for a hairdryer, there's an issue, and they might be little things, but they make a huge difference to girls, making sure that they've got cubicle showers, because we are different, and the privacy element for women is really important. Also making it really social, really fun. So it's pleasing that girls are doing, but now we have to capitalize on that and go, right, what's the research project now? Why are girls doing more activity? What has happened in lockdown that has said, okay, well, actually, do girls like doing it social, or do they like doing it on their own, where they can just go off and do their own thing? So I think there's a piece in there for somebody to pick up and go, right, okay, what's linked to that? And then how can we then put that into the curriculum? And then how can we encourage that lower down into the primary schools, like I said earlier?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, loads of stuff to work on. But thank you so much for your time, Casey. It's been a massive insight for me, and hopefully everyone else has found it of use. So thank you very much for joining everyone else on the line. Obviously, this webinar kicks off a whole series of sessions that would have been at Active Uprising. So please do have a look on our website for anything further. But as I said, highlights of this will be on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. And thank you again, Casey. It's been lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
Cheers.